What's happening, guys? Aruj again, and today we're talking about types of natural selection. There are three types, and today we're going to cover stabilizing selection, directional selection, and disruptive selection. So let's take a look at what these are. Let's say if I graph the population of lizards based on their body size. Now, let's say normally there's very, very few individuals with a small body size, and as I count them and graph them, there begins to be an increase in individuals with a medium body size, and then finally there's a smaller population with those with a large body size. Well, let's say that through selection, let's say that individuals that are too small, let's say that they're too slow. They're too slow to get away from predators. And those that are too large, they can't hide. They're easily detected, okay? So they can't hide from predators. So these ones are too slow. These ones can't hide. And the ones that are the most beneficial is a medium-sized body type. So if there's a selection and we graph the change in population, we would see that there's a bigger increase or more individuals with this medium-sized body type, okay? And we call this stabilizing selection. In stabilizing selection, there's an average or an intermediate variation that is selected for, okay? The second type of selection is directional selection. Now, let's say we have our starting population, and there is a selection, there's a change, and this one is going to be tongue length, and we're looking at the tongue length of anteaters, okay? Well, let's say if we graph the change in population after selection, we'll see that there's an increase in those with a longer tongue, okay? And we would call this one directional selection. We'll say one extreme is selected for, okay? So the longer the tongue of the anteater, the more beneficial that is, and the more likely they're able to gather resources and survive and reproduce. Now the last one is disruptive selection. Let's say we have our population, and what ends up becoming selected for is not one extreme, like over here. In directional selection, it was one. In disruptive selection, we're going to have two different extremes that are selected for. So we'll have, in this situation, we'll have these little critters are called limpets. They're like sea snails. And we'll see that there's two variations of their color. We'll see that there's a very, very light color of limpet, and then we'll see that there's a very, very dark color of limpet. And the intermediate is not beneficial. The intermediate, there's a decline in the population. And the reason being is the light-colored shells are able to wash up on light-colored rocks, and they'll have camouflage from predators. And the dark-colored limpets, they'll get washed up on dark-colored rocks that have lots of barnacles on them, and it makes the rocks very, very dark. So the dark-colored limpets are beneficial. However, an intermediate or an average shell color, it doesn't matter where they wash up at, whether if they wash up on the pale rocks or the dark-colored rocks, they'll stand out to predators. There's no camouflage. So we'll see a decrease in this population. So since we have two extremes, we have very, very dark and very, very light, we call that disruptive selection. There's two extremes that are selected for. Directional selection was one extreme, the longer the tongue, the better. And stabilizing selection was an average variation. Medium body size in lizards is beneficial, okay? So these are the notes that I want you guys to jot down. For stabilizing selection, an average or intermediate variation is selected for. The example, body size in lizards. Directional selection, one extreme is selected for. So the longer the tongue in anteaters, the better. And lastly, disruptive selection, two extremes is selected for. Either very, very light or very, very dark is selected for. Whoops. and the limpets shell color. Okay, so this is your note, and that is it for today, and I will see you guys next time.